Usually when we think about the story of human evolution, we tend to imagine this incredibly neat, orderly staircase.
Oh, right, like that
Yeah.
classic illustration.
Yeah, exactly. It starts with a hunched over ape at the bottom, right? And with every step, the posture gets a little straighter, the tools get a little sharper.
Until you reach the top.
Right, until you reach the top. And there we are. The modern human just looking out over the planet, totally in charge. It feels like this, inevitable progression.
It does. I mean, it's a very comforting image for us to hold on to, really, because it implies a clear destiny.
Like we were meant to be here.
Exactly. It makes it feel like we were always meant to inherit the Earth. Like we had some sort of a biological VIP pass from the very beginning.
But diving into the massive stack of notes we've gathered today from Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens, it becomes overwhelmingly clear that the staircase is just a complete myth.
A total fabrication, yeah.
Right. And our mission for this deep dive is to extract the absolute most mind-blowing insights about our origins from these notes. To really understand who you are as a modern human, we have to look at the actual timeline.
The timeline puts everything into perspective.
It really does. I mean, physics kicked off with the Big Bang, 13.5 billion years ago? And biology, the first single-celled organisms, that was 3.8 billion years ago.
Right.
But the history of our specific species, that only really started about 70,000 years ago with something called the cognitive revolution.
And this is where we have to establish the biggest paradigm shift for you listening to this. Because for the vast majority of our existence, humans were completely, utterly insignificant.
Which is so wild to think about.
It is. I mean, for millions and millions of years, we were marginal creatures. We had no more impact on our global environment than, like, gorillas or fireflies or jellyfish.
Just totally under the radar.
Exactly. We weren't the stars of the planetary show at all. We were barely background extras.
Which is a pretty humbling place to start. And to figure out how we got from the background to the center stage, okay, let's unpack this. We have to look at the actual skeletons in our closet.
The literal skeletons, yeah.
Right, because we weren't always the only humans on the block. Around 100,000 years ago, there were at least 6 different human species walking the Earth at the exact same time.
At least 6. It's incredible.
You had Homo neanderthalensis in Europe, Homo erectus in Asia, and Erectus, by the way, survived for a record 2 million years.
Which is a run we are highly, highly unlikely to beat.
Yeah, I definitely don't see us making it that long. And then you had Homo floresiensis, who were literally dwarf-sized humans living on the Indonesian island of Flores.
It really was a world straight out of a fantasy novel. But, it was biological reality. And all of these diverse human species shared a few defining traits.
Mainly the big brains, right?
Right. Unusually large brains compared to other mammals.
Brr.
But those jumbo brains came at a massive, almost crippling evolutionary cost.
How so?
Well, a large brain is an incredible energy drain. In Homo sapiens, the brain is just 2 to 3% of our total body weight. But it consumes 25% of the body's energy when we are just at rest.
Wait, 25%? Just sitting there doing nothing?
Just resting. It's a huge overhead cost for an animal just trying to survive on the savannah.
That is staggering.
It really is.
Yeah.
To fuel that demanding organ, our ancestors had to spend far more time searching for food. And from a biological standpoint, the body actually had to divert energy away from other areas.
Oh, meaning their muscles actually shrank.
Exactly. Our muscles atrophied to feed our brains. Plus, we evolved to walk upright, which, gave us better vision over the tall grass.
And it freed up our hands for throwing stones and making tools.
Right. But our entire skeletal structure had to fundamentally change to do that. Walking upright is biomechanically very difficult for a primate.
So that's why my back always hurts.
Literally, yes. It gave us backaches and stiff necks. And crucially, it narrowed the birth canal right at the exact moment in evolutionary history when infant heads were getting larger.
So evolution had to find a workaround, which was that human babies had to be born prematurely before their heads got too big to fit through that narrowed canal.
Precisely. It was the only way they could survive the birth.
If you think about it, human babies are basically shipped as software in beta mode. Like, they're molten glass compared to a horse that's born like glazed earthenware, just ready to trot.
That's a great way to put it.
A foal can trot around just hours after it's born, but a human infant is entirely helpless. We require years of constant updates, nurturing, and intense socialization just to physically survive.
And that extreme helplessness is exactly why humans evolved such strong social ties. It literally takes a tribe to raise a human.
Right.
But even with those big brains and tightly knit social networks,
Hmm.
our position in the food chain was right in the middle for millions of years. Our original ecological niche wasn't hunting big game at all.
Wait, really? We weren't the heroic hunters taking down mammoths.
Not at first. We were essentially scavenging. We were marrow extractors.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around that mental image.
It's hard to picture, right?
Yeah. So we had to wait for a pack of lions to take down a giraffe. Then we had to hide in the brush and wait for the hyenas and jackals to finish the scraps.
Yep, just waiting our turn.
And only after the coast was entirely clear could our ancestors sneak in, crack open the remaining bones, and eat the marrow. We were the savannah's cleanup crew.
We really were. And understanding that mid-level scavenger status explains so much about human psychology today.
How do you mean?
Well, when we eventually made the jump to the top of the food chain, it happened so fast that the broader ecosystem didn't have time to adjust to our new power. And neither did our own psychology.
Oh, I see.
A lion is confident and majestic because its species evolved at the apex over millions of years. But humanity is more like an insecure middle manager who suddenly got promoted to CEO overnight.
Oh, wow, like a banana republic dictator.
Exactly.
You-
We are terrified someone is going to realize how vulnerable we actually are. So we overreact to everything. We're anxious, defensive, and capable of immense cruelty because we still possess the mindset of a vulnerable scavenger.
A crucial stepping stone in managing that terror and climbing that ladder was the domestication of fire around 300,000 years ago. Obviously, fire was a weapon, and a source of warmth.
Absolutely.
But its real biological superpower was that it allowed us to cook.
Cooking was revolutionary. It effectively acts as an external stomach.
An external stomach.
Yeah, it pre-digests our food, it kills parasites and bacteria, and it radically reduces the metabolic energy needed to chew and digest tough fibers and raw meat.
Oh, so because we didn't have to chew for 6 hours a day like chimpanzees do, our jaw muscles actually shrank.
Right, which removed structural pressure on the skull and allowed the brain case to expand even further. And our intestines physically shortened over time.
Because shorter intestines use much less energy.
Exactly, which freed up even more daily calories to power that demanding jumbo brain of ours.
So fire gave us a tool independent of our physical bodies. But even with fire and slightly larger brains, we were still just a minor blip on the ecological radar for hundreds of thousands of years.
We really were.
So the obvious question is, what suddenly happened 70,000 years ago that allowed our specific ancestors, Homo sapiens, to wipe out all our human siblings and completely take over the globe?
Well, it certainly wasn't an immediate triumph. In fact, the archaeological record shows that our first encounters with Neanderthals around 100,000 years ago ended in defeat.
Wait, we lost.
We did. Sapiens migrated into Neanderthal territory in the Middle East, couldn't handle the harsh climate or the native inhabitants, and just retreated back to Africa.
Wow.
But around 70,000 years ago, a monumental shift occurred. Researchers theorized that an accidental genetic mutation, often referred to by historians as the tree of knowledge mutation, completely rewired the internal structures of the sapiens' brain.
It didn't necessarily make the brain larger, right? It just changed the internal connections.
Exactly. And this triggered what we call the cognitive revolution.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because this rewiring gave us a completely new type of language. It wasn't just that we could vocalize sounds. Whales and elephants do that to communicate about physical threats.
Right. And green monkeys can emit specific calls that mean careful, a lion.
But our new syntactical language didn't just evolve to describe physical reality, it evolved for gossip.
It sounds trivial when we call it gossip, I know, but it is the bedrock foundation of human dominance.
Why is gossip so powerful?
Because to survive in a complex social group, you don't just need to know where the lions are hiding. You need to know the intricate social map of your tribe. You need to know who hates whom, who is forming an alliance, who is honest.
And who is a free rider just not pulling their weight.
Exactly. Gossip lets you track all of that.
Even today, if you look at the vast majority of human communication, whether it's corporate emails, phone calls, or reality television, it's gossip. It's the original Fourth Estate constantly auditing the social group to protect society from cheats.
That's exactly what it does.
But wait, chimps form political coalitions by physically kissing babies and grooming each other.
They do, yeah.
But it's a massive one-on-one time investment, which naturally limits a chimp troop to maybe 50 individuals. So does human gossip have a hard limit too? There are only so many people's secrets you can keep track of.
You're exactly right. Sociological research points to a very specific threshold of roughly 150 individuals.
150?
Yeah. When you consider that keeping track of 150 people means you aren't just remembering 150 names, you are remembering the thousands of intersecting relationships between all those individuals.
Oh, right. Bob hates Sue, but Sue is friends with John.
Exactly. That quickly reaches the processing limit of the human brain. A group bonded purely by gossip and intimate acquaintance cannot reliably exceed 150 people.
Okay, that makes sense.
Below that number, a platoon of soldiers or a family business can run perfectly fine based on mutual trust and reputation. You don't need formal ranks or an HR department.
But if our natural biological social limit is firmly set at 150 people, how on earth did we eventually build ancient cities of tens of thousands and modern global empires of millions?
That is the multi-million-dollar question. And the answer is the true, unparalleled superpower of Homo sapiens.
Fiction.
Fiction.
That's storytelling.
Exactly. It's the cognitive ability to talk about things that do not physically exist. Legends, gods, myths, invisible concepts. When millions of strangers all believe in the same fictional stories, they can cooperate flexibly on a massive scale.
It's the ultimate evolutionary hack, and you can see this dynamic everywhere today once you know to look for it. Think about the Peugeot car company as a modern imagined reality.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
What is Peugeot, actually? It's not the physical cars. If you scrapped every single Peugeot vehicle today, the company would still exist.
Right.
It's not the factories, it's not the assembly line workers, it's not even the CEO. If all those people vanished, Peugeot SA, the legal entity, would still survive in the corporate registry.
Because Peugeot is a figment of our collective imagination. It is what lawyers call a limited liability company. It was invented to allow people to take business risks without losing their personal homes if the business failed. It exists purely as a legal concept.
Hold on, I can hear people pushing back on this, wondering, aren't imagined realities just lies? Like, if a monkey shouts lion when there is absolutely no lion, just so he can scare the troop away and steal a banana, is that an imagined reality?
No, that is just individual deceit. The crucial difference here is that a lie is a temporary deception by an individual for immediate gain. An imagined reality is a communal belief that exerts very real, tangible force in the world.
Okay, that's a huge distinction.
It is. Human rights, money, international borders, limited liability companies, none of these things exist in the physical universe. You can't touch human rights. You can't measure the mass of a corporation.
Right, they exist only in the stories we invent.
Exactly. But because we all believe them, they have the power to move mountains and coordinate millions of strangers.
In the notes we pulled, Harari makes a fascinating comparison here. He points out that the way we create these fictions hasn't really changed for thousands of years.
Oh, the legal spellcasting idea.
Yes. According to his framing, when Armand Peugeot wanted to create his company, he essentially paid a lawyer to write down a specific set of legal spells and oaths on decorated paper.
And then stamped it.
Right. Stamped it, signed it, and the company legally existed out of thin air. Harari argues this structurally mirrors religious rituals.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it makes total sense.
He looks specifically at the Catholic sacrament of the Eucharist, where a priest turns bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ by saying the Latin words, Hoc est corpus meum, which, interestingly, is where the phrase hocus pocus originates.
It's a powerful analogy.
And just to be clear to you listening, the author's point here isn't to weigh in on theology or take sides, but just to illustrate that both modern corporate law and ancient religious institutions rely entirely on a massive, shared communal belief to coordinate human behavior.
And the evolutionary advantage of this shared belief is staggering. By changing the stories we believe, sapiens can change their behavior overnight.
Without waiting for biology to catch up.
Exactly. We essentially bypassed the slow traffic jam of the genome. We didn't need to wait hundreds of thousands of years for our DNA to mutate to adapt to a new social structure.
That makes perfect sense when you look at history. Think of Catholic priests remaining celibate for centuries. That behavior completely contradicts the fundamental rule of biological evolution.
Right. They deliberately aren't passing on their genes.
But the cultural story they believe in is so powerful it overrides their biological imperatives. Or consider a German woman born in 1900. She could have lived through the Hohenzollern Empire, the Weimar Republic, the Nazi Third Reich, Communist East Germany, and a reunified democratic Germany.
5 totally different regimes.
Exactly, 5 completely different, incredibly complex socio-political regimes in a single lifetime, adapting to each one, all with the exact same DNA.
Armed with this unmatched cognitive superpower of collective imagination and flexible cooperation, sapiens were practically unstoppable.
But to really understand what this meant for the planet, we have to look at the day-to-day reality of sapiens in the tens of thousands of years before we ever invented farming.
Right, before agriculture changed everything.
First, we need to debunk a major myth about this era, the Stone Age. It really should be called the Wood Age because the vast majority of their tools were made of wood.
Wood just happens to rot away, leaving only the durable stone behind for archaeologists to find, which obviously skews our perspective.
And the day-to-day life of these nomadic foragers wasn't a miserable, grinding struggle for survival like we usually picture. Many historians actually call it the original affluent society.
They worked maybe 35 to 45 hours a week, hunting and gathering.
They didn't have to do dishes, they didn't have a mortgage to worry about, they didn't vacuum, and their diets were incredibly varied. Berries and mushrooms in the morning, snails for lunch, rabbit for dinner.
That very diet was crucial. It meant they rarely suffered from malnutrition or vitamin deficiencies. Unlike the later peasant farmers, who relied almost entirely on a single crop like wheat or rice, and whose bodies suffered terribly for it.
This actually connects directly to something you listening have probably experienced. When you're stressed out and suddenly spooning down an entire tub of Ben & Jerry's, that is just your ancient forager DNA thinking you've stumbled on a rare fig tree on the savannah, right?
Yes, that is the widely accepted gorging gene theory. Your brain is screaming, eat it all right now before the baboons get it, our modern Skulls House Stone Age minds.
It's so funny to think about.
It is. But it's very easy to look at that very diet and that 35-hour work week and romanticize the forager lifestyle as some kind of peaceful Eden.
Right, we have to balance that out.
We do, by remembering the strict, unforgiving constraints of nomadic life. A band of foragers is constantly on the move. They don't have beasts of burden.
They carry everything they own, including their children, on their own backs.
Exactly. And that harsh physical reality forced some incredibly brutal pragmatic choices.
Because you simply cannot afford to carry dead weight when your survival depends on mobility.
You really can't. We can look at the Ache people of Paraguay, hunter-gatherers who lived in the dense jungle until the 1960s, for a glimpse of this dynamic.
What happened with them?
Well, when an older band member couldn't keep up with the walking pace, they might be abandoned. There is a documented case of a sick, middle-aged man left under a tree for the vultures.
Oh my God.
He astonishingly recovered and caught up with the band, but he was covered in bird droppings. So for the rest of his life, his nickname was Vulture Droppings.
That is so dark.
It was. Older women were sometimes killed when they became too much of a burden. Babies born without hair, who were considered underdeveloped, were killed immediately.
It sounds horrific and callous to modern ears, but we have to remind you listening, we cannot judge them by modern moral standards.
No, we really can't.
These were highly intelligent humans making incredibly harsh survival choices. They loved their families, but they lived in a reality where carrying a liability could mean starvation or death for the entire group.
Yet, right alongside that darker pragmatism was a profound, almost staggering depth of spiritual belief and cultural complexity.
Oh, like the burial site.
Yes. In 1955, archaeologists in Russia discovered the 30,000-year-old Sungur burial site. They found the skeletons of two children, a boy and a girl, buried head to head.
But what was truly astonishing was what they were buried with.
Right. They were covered in 10,000 individually carved mammoth ivory beads.
And just to put the economics of that into perspective, experimental archaeologists found that carving a single bead took about 45 minutes of intensive labor.
Which means?
That means someone or entire community spent 7,500 hours of incredibly delicate labor just to honor these two kids. Kids who were far too young to be great hunters or strategic leaders.
Which fundamentally proves that even 30,000 years ago, sapiens possessed complex fictional hierarchies.
The children hadn't earned that status through hunting prowess.
No. Perhaps the tribe believed in inherited royalty. Or perhaps they thought the children were incarnations of ancient spirits. We will never know the exact stories they told around the fire.
But we know they believed in those animist stories deeply enough to invest years of communal labor into those beads.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? If we take a step back, you have this highly skilled, physically fit, culturally complex species.
Right.
They are cooperating flexibly in large numbers through shared myths, they're wielding fire to shape their environment, and they are communicating with intense precision. They were the ultimate middle management apex predator.
A very dangerous combination.
And they didn't just stay put in Afro-Asia, they wandered. And what happens when this rapidly adapting storytelling species steps foot on a virgin continent?
The result is total ecological upheaval. Around 45,000 years ago, sapiens living in the Indonesian archipelago achieved something staggering.
They built boats, right?
Yes, they somehow learned to build ocean-going vessels and navigated across the treacherous open sea to land in Australia. This was the first time any large terrestrial mammal had ever crossed from Afro-Asia to Australia.
It must have felt like landing on another planet for them.
Totally alien.
Australia was an isolated ecosystem ruled by giants. You had diprotodons, which were basically 2.5-ton wombats.
Massive creatures.
You had marsupial lions the size of modern tigers, giant kangaroos, flightless birds twice the size of ostriches.
But within just a few thousand years of sapiens arriving on those shores, 23 of the 24 large animal species, the megafauna, went completely extinct.
23 out of 24. It was an unprecedented ecological massacre.
It was.
You can almost picture exactly how it happened. Imagine a giant diprotodon, this giant wombat, chewing leaves on the beach. It sees this weird, hairless, frail-looking, two-legged ape wash ashore on a wooden raft.
Right, it doesn't look threatening at all.
Exactly. It doesn't look like a marsupial lion. It doesn't have sharp teeth or massive claws. So the diprotodon just gives it a glance and goes back to chewing eucalyptus leaves.
Because they hadn't evolved the fear of us.
Right. By the time they realized the frail ape was the deadliest thing on the planet, it was entirely too late.
That lack of evolutionary fear is a key component of the first theory explaining this extinction. Slow breeding combined with highly efficient human hunting.
Because the giants reproduce so slowly, right?
Yeah, maybe one offspring every few years. So killing even a handful of them a year would cause deaths to rapidly outpace births.
What's the second theory?
The second theory focuses on human technology, specifically fire agriculture. Sapiens deliberately burned vast tracts of dense forests to create open grasslands, which were easier to hunt in.
Oh, so they were terraforming.
Exactly. But this destroyed the ancient food chains and allowed fire-resistant eucalyptus trees to completely take over, starving the giant herbivores.
And the third theory?
The third theory suggests that natural climate change weakened the ecosystem at that time, and humans simply acted as an accomplice, the final fatal blow.
But the really chilling part of this history is that the Australian extinction wasn't an isolated incident. It was a clear, undeniable pattern.
It absolutely was. When sapiens trekked across the Siberian ice and crossed the land bridge into America about 16,000 years ago, the exact same thing happened.
The North American mammoths, the saber-toothed cats.
The giant sloths.
Yeah.
All wiped out within a few millennia. When humans later reached New Zealand, the local megafauna vanished.
And Wrangel Island too, right?
Yes, when humans reached Wrangel Island in the Arctic, the last surviving mammoths on Earth disappeared. Homo sapiens was an ecological serial killer tens of thousands of years before the first wheat field was ever planted.
So synthesizing all these incredible threads together for you listening, sapiens went from being terrified bone marrow scavengers hiding from lions in the tall grass to becoming the undisputed apex predators of the entire globe.
An incredible journey.
And we didn't achieve that dominance by growing sharper teeth or thicker fur or running faster. We did it by gossiping.
Gossiping in fiction.
Right. By inventing invisible ghosts like corporations, tribal spirits, and human rights. We did it by using fire to literally rewrite the ecology of entire continents.
And the ultimate takeaway for you, listening to this deep dive, is that you carry this entire massive history within you right now.
Every single day.
Yes. Your daily modern life, your backache from sitting hunched over a desk because your spine wasn't built for it, your irresistible craving for a sugary donut, your intense anxieties about where you stand in your social hierarchy, and your deep belief in the invisible laws that govern our society. It is all built entirely on the biological and cognitive foundations of those ancient forager ancestors.
We are essentially a Stone Age operating system running a 21st century world.
That is exactly what we are.
Which leaves us with a pretty intense final thought for you to chew on as we wrap up. If our entire dominance of this planet is based on our unique ability to invent and believe in collective fictions, things like money, borders, laws, and nations, what happens to our species when those global fictions begin to fracture?
That is a terrifying question.
Or, even wilder to think about, what happens when we finish building artificial intelligence?
Yeah.
An entity that might just possess the processing power to invent totally new, complex fictions of its own. Will it look back at us the way we looked at the Neanderthals? Suddenly, that neat, orderly staircase of human evolution doesn't look so inevitable anymore, does it?